Exposed. The sinister spaceship discovered in Antarctica reveals a haunted future for 1939. Maple Grove sat beneath an eerie half-moon, shadows curling around the unpaved roads, like fingers creeping up a spine. Sarah's heartbeat drummed loudly in her ears as she drove home, her tired eyes straining against the fog of exhaustion. That's when she saw it, a flicker in the sky resembling distant stars, but unlike anything she'd seen before. Blue and red lights danced unnaturally, twisting and folding over themselves, sending chills racing down her back. Was it just fatigue? Or was it something more sinister? The next day, news spread through town like a wildfire as the locals buzzed about Dr. Eli Carter, the charismatic scientist claiming to have unearthed an ancient spaceship deep beneath thick Antarctic ice. Tension filled the air as he spoke, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. The townsfolk leaned under his enchanting spell, their eyes widening, hanging on to every word about technology that could predict the future, visions of bright tomorrows tinged with dark omens. They called it a breakthrough, but something in Sarah's gut churned. This was no miracle. She had bills to pay, mouths to feed. She didn't have time for flights of fancy. But then Timmy came bouncing into the living room, eyes wide with wonder. "Mommy, the stars called me. They're my friends, and they want us to come play." His words slipped into Sarah's heart like an ice pick. Lily stared at the wall, entranced as if hearing a distant symphony. The whispers among the neighbors grew louder, more frantic, splitting the community apart like a crack in the earth. Mr. Hawkins, once her ally, now stood enraptured by the tales of Dr. Carter, his eyes glinting with an obsession that sent cold dread through her veins. As she wandered through the town, shadows lengthened and smiles felt more like masks. People were drawn in, almost drawn away, oblivious to their own creeping doom. Sarah's instincts screamed loud. An old fear she'd thought buried in the back of her mind clawed its way to the surface. She couldn't afford to lose sight of reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One chilling night, arms quaking in the silence, Sarah walked home alone beneath the gaze of a starless sky. The air thickened with unease, clinging to her like the weight of invisible chains. She stumbled upon Mr. Hawkins, who grinned too wide, too bright. "Sarah, you must feel it too. The pull of the future. We're finally moving beyond our past." His breath smelled sweet and sickening, a toxic mix of something dark. Panic stabbed at her gut as doubt crept in. Where did those friendly smiles go? Where were the kind neighbors she once knew? Something was deeply off, far worse than the debts looming overhead. She felt it in her bones. As she backed away, the shadows behind Mr. Hawkins loomed larger, swallowing the faint yellow glow of the streetlight. Their intentions twisted in knots of icy fear. Suddenly she knew she was racing against time. Not just for her children, but for the very soul of Maple Grove itself, which lay entwined in betrayal and whispers of the sinister craft beneath the ice, waiting for what her children? The town? She gripped her racing heart, preparing for the confrontation to break the spell before it was too late. Shadows danced above, but a darker truth loomed below. Sarah quickened her pace, each step a battle against rising panic. Her heart thudded like a drum, echoing in the stagnant air. She had to get home, to warn her kids, to shield them from whatever dark force was weaving through Maple Grove. People were changing, their faces morphing from familiar warmth into something unrecognizable, a hollow mask, void of compassion. Shivering, she crossed the threshold of her house, silence enveloping her like a thick fog. Timmy's room was aglow with a soft, otherworldly light, flickering like fireflies trapped in a bottle. She froze, dread curling in her stomach. "Timmy?" she called, her voice trembling, barely louder than a whisper. No response came. Lily sat in the living room, eyes fixed on the television, the screen blaring static, a chaotic storm of white noise. A chill crept along Sarah's spine as she approached. "Lily? Honey, are you okay?" Lily turned her head slowly, her gaze vacant, as if she were staring into another realm, detached from reality. "Mommy, they're coming for us, the stars. They said we should wait." Her voice was distant, almost robotic. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. What had gotten into her children? Was this the influence of Dr. Carter's twisted discoveries? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her with a force that rattled the windows. It was as if an unseen hand had slammed it shut, a warning shot echoing in the silent house. The light in Timmy's room flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. Panic surged through her. "Timmy!" she screamed, racing toward the door, the familiar warmth of home turning into a prison. As she turned the handle, it wouldn't budge. "What the?" She pushed harder, but it felt like the door was glued shut, betrayed by its own sturdy frame. Behind her, she could hear whispers, low, murmuring, wrapping around her like vines looking to choke. "Join us!" The whispers hissed in unison, raising the hairs on her arms. With a primal scream that echoed through the house, Sarah lunged at the door, throwing her body against it. The wood creaked and groaned but held firm. The hypnotic light danced by the crack beneath the door, casting shadows that twisted like serpents. Finally, in a crescendo of desperation, there was a faint click. The door swung open. Timmy stood in the middle of his room, bathed in blue light, his face serene yet unsettling. "Mommy, come play with us," he said softly, his voice harmonious yet tinged with something dark, something that sent tempestuous quakes through her very soul. Behind him, the room shimmered with shapes, figures that seemed to pulse with energy, shifting in and out of focus as if beckoning. The air smelled metallic, like an impending storm. Goosebumps erupted across her skin, and she fought the urge to flee. "You're not my Timmy!" she cried, her voice cracking. "Mommy, don't fight the future." He smiled, and for a split second, the warmth of her boy flickered through. But it was swallowed again by that eerie, dispassionate glaze that sent her heart racing. With one swift motion, she dashed to her child, grasping his shoulders. "We need to leave this place. Now!" But as she touched him, the figures behind him surged forth, engulfing her in a veil of chilling darkness that dug deep into her bones. As she stumbled back, a blinding flash of light engulfed her. The world around her spun like a violent storm. She could hear a chorus of voices melding into one dreadful harmony, a song of both invitation and warning. Breathless and terrified, she found herself outside, but nothing seemed real. The town looked different, more warped, more alive. The stars above glowed with an unsettling intensity, beckoning her. As she searched the ghostly streets, understanding hit her like a punch to the gut. The ship below was just a relic. It was a part of Maple Grove, and it didn't just hold secrets of the past, it promised a future bound by darkness. Despair clouded her thoughts as she grasped the severity of her mission. There was no choice, she had to reach Dr. Carter and get answers, even if it led her deeper into the abyss. Turning away from the haunting light, a voice echoed in her mind. The stars were calling, but they weren't her friends. They were something much more dangerous, and they wouldn't rest until they had what they wanted. As she sprinted into the night, the shadows elongated behind her, whispering her name. What awaited her at the heart of Maple Grove? Would she find the strength to fight back against the dark tide creeping in? The answer loomed just ahead. The streets stretched before Sarah, dark and twisted, the once familiar neighborhood now a landscape of horrors. She dashed past the houses, their facades looming like unwelcoming sentinels. Every shadow seemed to pulse, alive with the whispers that had chased her from her home. "Join us!" They were everywhere, rustling just out of sight, curling around her like a fog. Sarah's heartbeat echoed in her ears, louder than her frantic breaths. She had to find Dr. Carter. He had answers he had to. She had fought through the dread that threatened to suffocate her, but the fear couldn't be ignored. Timmy's eyes haunted her thoughts, the warmth barely flickering behind that eerie facade. As she turned a corner, she could see the faint glow of the science lab at the edge of town. It looked smaller now, as if the shadows had consumed it whole. Gritting her teeth, she pushed herself forward, trying to focus on each step rather than the fear gnawing at her edges. Reaching the door, she hesitated. What if Dr. Carter was one of them now? What if he had succumbed to the darkness? With a shaking hand, she gripped the handle, fear coursing through her veins. She threw open the door and stumbled in. The lab was dimly lit, papers strewn about, equipment humming with a life of its own. Dr. Carter stood in the center, surrounded by a circle of flickering screens. His eyes were wide, staring through her, as if he were peering at something far beyond her reach. "Sarah, you're too late," he murmured, his voice laced with a haunting melody. "What do you mean? Where are my kids? What is happening?" Panic clawed at her throat. "They're not your children anymore," he replied, voice calm yet disjointed, a puppet efficiently playing its role. "They have been chosen. It is an evolution." An involuntary shiver ran down her spine. Evolution? Chosen for what? "The stars have whispered, and they are coming for us. The past, the future, they have intertwined." The screens blinked to life, showcasing swirling images of constellations and cryptic symbols and alien code that sent her heart racing. "You have to help them. You have to help me," she pleaded, desperation clinging to her words. "I can't," he responded softly. "You don't understand. Some doors once open can't be closed. They're awakening." He turned back to the screens, otherworldly light reflecting off his wide eyes. Sarah stepped closer, raw panic bubbling within her. "Dr. Carter, please!" "What do I do? I can't leave without them." But he barely acknowledged her, lost in the grip of a far-off sound, the low hum of voices growing louder. "Embrace it," he whispered. "Join them, join us." Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the whispers surged, overpowering everything. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in this nightmare. She was trapped in a cacophony of voices, each one echoing her name, each one a shroud trying to pull her under. "Sarah!" A voice broke through, shocking and familiar. It was Timmy. She broke free of her paralysis, rushing toward a window, desperate to see outside. Shadows were swirling in the streets, coiling around familiar shapes. "Timmy!" she cried, chest tightening as she watched the silhouette of her son slip through the darkness. The window exploded outward, sending shards of glass flying through the air. She ducked, barely avoiding the deadly rain, and instinctively turned back to Dr. Carter, now absorbed by a deep chant, his arms raised to the ceiling as if in prayer to the very stars they seemed to worship. Desperate, she lunged toward the door, but Dr. Carter's voice morphed into a chilling symphony, weaving thousands of whispers into one suffocating blanket. The warmth of her reality slipped away, the darkness beckoning with promises wrapped in lies. In the chaos, a thought struck her. If they exchanged her children as souls, was there still a way to save them? The noise dubbed into silence, and she took a steadying breath, closing her eyes and reaching out through the dark web of noise. Was it true? Could she break the spell? As she opened her eyes, everything felt still. The lab was quiet, abandoned power lingering like a ghost. But somewhere out there, in the encroaching shadows, A flicker of light caught her eye. She recognized it was Timmy's. With a surge of hope and determination, Sarah pushed through the remaining shards of fear. She would confront whatever darkness laid ahead. There was no time to waste. Nothing, no matter how terrifying, would stop her from reclaiming her children. And as she moved toward the glimmering light amid the shadows, the whispers grew louder again, weaving together a warning that chilled her to her core. Come play with us. What awaited her in the final confrontation? Would she ignite the fight or succumb to the dark allure calling her name? The darkness engulfed Sarah as she fled the lab, a suffocating blanket made of fear and uncertainty. The whispers coiled around her, threading through her mind, trying to seduce her into submission. Join us, they echoed, entwining her thoughts, but she shook her head violently, focusing instead on the flicker of Timmy's light shimmering in the distance. Outside, the air was thick with an otherworldly chill. The shadows writhed on the ground, knee-high and twisted, like living things searching for hosts. As she dashed forward, she kept her eyes peeled for Timmy, the luminous spark drawing her closer to the heart of the horror. "Timmy!" she screamed, her voice cracking as panic clawed at her throat. "I'm coming!" Underneath the dim streetlights, she glimpsed figures moving, their shapes warped and unnatural. They had once been children, laughing and playing tag in the sun. Now they were seekers of something sinister, driven by an unseen force. Their eyes, once filled with innocence, now glowed with a chilling, hollow light. They called to her, their voices layered with an unsettling harmony that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Sarah, come play." The sound threaded through the air like poison, their melody so sweet, and yet so wrong. It was as if the very essence of her children had been twisted into a lure, drawing her closer into the depths of despair. Each step felt heavier, the ground beneath her sinking, trying to pull her back into the dark. Casting a glance over her shoulder, she could see the doorway of the lab looming behind her, a portal to madness. Dr. Carter stood motionless, his chant echoing, mingling with the wails of the damned. She couldn't turn back now. With every ounce of willpower, Sarah sprinted toward the shadowy playground where she had first heard the familiar voice, where everything had changed. The air thickened, each breath filled with dread. There, crouched in the dimness, she saw him, her Timmy. He was so close, the light from his form pulsing like a heartbeat against the oppressive gloom. "Mommy," he called, a voice she recognized but mixed with an edginess that sent cold tendrils of fear spiraling through her. "Timmy!" She lunged forward, arms outstretched, but something held her back, an invisible force binding her in place. The ground quaked slightly as if protesting her desire, and shadows grew taller, slithering closer, reaching for her. "Join us!" A chorus of the other children rose once more, their distorted bodies lurching toward her, grinning with toothy, manic glee. The echoes of laughter rang hollow, but the intensity of their twisted joy pulled at her heart. "Get away from him!" she shouted, forcing her voice to break through the encroaching darkness. "Timmy! Come here, sweetheart!" His gaze flickered, lost in a place she couldn't reach. She felt her heart shatter as she watched him hesitate. The spark dimmed, and shadows pooled around him like thick, syrupy darkness. "I want to play," he said, a strange lilt in his voice that chilled her to the bone. "No! That's not you, Timmy. Fight it!" Her heart raced as the bond that once held warmth and love began to fray. The air crackled with hostile energy, a promise of destruction if she failed. The whispers crescendoed, drowning her in a tempest of confusion and sorrow. Railing against the dark, Sarah felt a surge of primal instinct, a mother's hunger to protect. Summoning the last shred of hope buried within, she slammed her hands to her chest, gripping her heart over the growing emptiness catching fire. "Timmy, I love you. Remember our game? We always win together. You're not lost." In that moment, a flicker of recognition sparked in his eyes. "Mommy?" The children's laughter turned into a chorus of screams as they lunged, shadows twisting in defiance. Sarah held her breath, her chest tightening as she saw it and escape. A fissure of light emerging behind the children, like a gateway, but quickly closing as the darkness writhed. Could she reach him before it was too late? The choice hung in the air, an unresolved question creeping into the edges of her sanity. Would she fight the dark presences to bring her son back? Or would she have to plunge even deeper into the abyss to save him? As she leapt forward, arms stretched wide, the light flickered once more, an invitation or a trap. The moment Sarah lunged forward, the world warped around her. She felt time stretch, as if the air itself had thickened, trapping her in a moment she desperately wanted to escape. Her outstretched hands reached for Timmy, the light pulsating like a beacon, a final promise of hope amidst the horror that encased them. "Timmy!" she screamed, as shadowy tendrils scraped at her ankles, pulling her back into the darkness. The children, now twisted phantoms of their former selves, surged forward, their eyes gleaming with unholy delight. They craved her despair. They thrived on it. With a burst of strength, she wrenched her feet from the clutches of the darkness and shot toward the flickering light. But the moment Timmy's face came into focus, the glow faltered. The light thinned, battling against the creeping shadows that caressed them both like a serpent's kiss. "Mommy!" His voice was a fragile echo, a spark of recognition amid the madness, but it was fading, swallowed by the darkness that closed around him. She had to move faster. "Remember the treehouse?" she urged, wrapping her memories around him like a lifeline. "The one with the secret door? We promised we'd always find a way back home." There was a flicker of understanding in his eyes, a fleeting moment where the warmth of their bond fought against the chill of the unearthly force binding him. The shadows hissed, and the hollow laughter intensified, like nails scraping on glass. "Join us," they gleefully sang, inching closer, arms outstretched, fingers twitching with each step, as if to pluck her from her resolve. "No!" Sarah roared, feeling the fire ignite within her, a mother's wrath manifesting in her veins. She dashed toward him, heart racing, determination fueling her every move. The brightness of her love surged against the blackness threatening to swallow them whole. With one final push, she broke through the throng of phantoms, her arms wrapping around Timmy just as he wilted into the sticky shadows. The coldness lashed against her, a thousand icy fingers clawing at her skin. But she tightened her grip, squeezing him against her. "Timmy! We have to fight!" For a heartbeat, everything stood still. Her heart thundered against her rib cage, echoing in the silence that opened up around them, and for a moment, she and Timmy were cocooned in a bubble of warmth amidst the icy void. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore." His voice trembled, a painful whisper just as the laughter bubbled up anew. It was a warning, an insidious invitation that wrapped around them like a noose. "Then let us run." She dragged him back, and the shadows recoiled as if stung. Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath her, their footsteps sending ripples through the darkness, each step a rebellion against the gathering storm. But the children had not given up. They dashed after her, a chaotic discord of cries mingling with laughter, echoing through the empty playground. "Come back. Come play." They were relentless, pouring into the world as if the darkness coursed straight through their veins. Just as they reached the playground's edge, a deafening roar erupted from behind them. A ripple of aura erupted as the shadows surged forward, building a wall of blackness that threatened to encapsulate them completely. "Timmy! Hold on to me tight." With strength she didn't know she had, Sarah twisted and sprinted towards the narrow alley that led back toward the lab. It was their only chance, but the shadows were faster. They snapped at her heels, eager to reclaim their prize, to break their bond. Just when she thought they could fly free, a howl rose that tore through the air, chilling to the bone. From the depths of the darkness, a monstrous form began to take shape, rising like a nightmare birthed from the very essence of the void, its shape ugly and grotesque. "Sarah!" Timmy cried out, his small voice barely carrying over the din. "What is that?" Her heart galloped wildly as she skidded to a halt, horror slicing through her like a dagger. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." As the creature's gaze settled on Sarah, the shadows converged like a hungry wave, ready to swallow them whole. Could they defeat the horror that lurked just behind them? Or would the darkness finally claim both mother and son as its own? A truth lingered in the air. The ordeal was just beginning. The ground shook violently beneath her feet, sending Sarah sprawling. Timmy clung to her, confusion painting his small face. The creature loomed, its grotesque form twisting, all sharp angles and shifting shadows. It seemed to breathe, sucking in the darkness around it, feeding off the fear that jolted through Sarah's body. "Run, Mommy!" Timmy whimpered, tugging at her sleeve, his innocent eyes wide with terror. But she was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer enormity of the nightmare bearing down on them. The world erupted with a cacophony of screams and laughter intertwined, a grating melody that echoed through the alley. "Play with us! Play forever!" The voices swirled, taunting and shrieking, as if the shadows themselves were alive with hunger. With a surge of will, Sarah pushed herself to her feet, yanking Timmy alongside her. They dashed through the alley, heart pounding, lungs burning. But the beast was relentless. It followed them, every step they took echoing against the damp, cold walls of the alley. Its breath, a cold wind, fanned out behind them, pulling at their clothes like grim fingers trying to drag them back. Suddenly, a sharp corner loomed ahead. Sarah veered, almost losing balance but managing to round the bend. She didn't know where they were going, but anywhere was better than this. "Mommy, I'm scared." Timmy's voice broke through the terror engulfing Sarah, grounding her momentarily. She glanced down, seeing the raw fear etched into his features. "Stay close to me. Don't let go," she shouted, trying to mask the tremor in her own voice. With each twist and turn, the alley seemed to stretch endlessly, becoming a labyrinth designed to trap them. The whispers grew louder, spiraling into the chaotic disappointment of the children they'd already left behind. "You can't escape," they sang, the rhythm linking to Timmy's own heartbeat, pulsing with dread. Sarah felt a sudden chill wash over her. An electric shiver danced down her spine. Just ahead, flickering lights broke through the oppressive darkness. An emergency exit. The door stood ajar, a little slice of hope beckoning through the gloom. "Timmy! We have to get through that door." She tugged him toward the light, adrenaline surging as she pushed her body into a sprint. But before they reached it, a shadow lunged from the corner. It curled around Timmy's legs like a viper. He yelped, falling to the ground. "Timmy!" Panic clawed at Sarah's throat as she lunged toward him. But the crowd of shadowy figures surged around both of them, trapping them in a whirlpool of darkness. The laughter deafened her, drowning out her desperate cries. In the midst of the chaos, she spotted the monstrous creature rising, its maw opening wide, glistening with emptiness, ready to swallow them whole. Time slowed. She could see everything in sharp focus, the vibrant blue of Timmy's shirt, the way the darkness coiled around them like a snake, and the creature's yellow eyes staring right into her soul. Then she heard a whisper. It was T laughter. It was T taunting. "Help us!" It was Timmy's voice mixed with something unfamiliar, something that filled her with dread. "No! No! Timmy, don't listen to them." She lunged forward, desperately reaching for him, but the shadows tightened their grip, pulling him closer to the abyss. As she fought against the tide of despair, the lights from the emergency exit flickered once more, and a new sound layered over the chaos, a deep, rumbling growl that didn't belong to the creature looming behind. Sarah's heart raced. Had they found an ally? Or was something else waiting to emerge from the shadows, eager to fuel the nightmare? One thing was clear. They were not alone, and the answer she sought lay just beyond the darkness. "Timmy! We are getting out. Together." But as she strained to pull him back into her arms, the shadows twisted around her, suffocating any hope she clung to. In that moment of desperation, a chilling realization dawned. Escaping this nightmare might be worse than being trapped in it. What other fates awaited them in this forsaken place? The shadows writhed like a living entity, suffocating Sarah's cries as she fought to reach Timmy. The once familiar alley had become a frenzied whirlwind of sound and dark shapes, spinning into a horror beyond her wildest dreams. She could hear the laughter morphing into something more sinister, a cacophony that lashed out at her sanity. "Let go of him!" she screamed, her voice barely a whisper drowned by the madness around them. But the darkness only tightened, its grip like ice, and for a moment, despair wrapped its claws around her heart. Then, within the suffocating grip of shadows, she heard it again, a growl, deep and resonant, reverberating through the alley walls. It was not the creature's voice. It was different, primal, full of rage. And it was close. With a surge of instinct, Sarah twisted her body, channeling her fear into raw physicality. She fought against the black tendrils that coiled and constricted, pulling at her with a hunger that felt inexorable. "Timmy!" she cried again, her voice raw with desperation. The response was instant. The shadows shifted, momentarily easing around Timmy, just enough for Sarah to reach him. She grabbed his arm, a glimmer of hope igniting within her. But that moment was fleeting, and the darkness retaliated, tightening around them both when she tugged him closer. "Stop!" The command leaped from her throat, not as a plea but a declaration. She could feel it, the energy of the alley itself, pushing back against her desire to flee. This place thrived on fear, but she couldn't afford to give in. The growl crescendoed, and from the depths of the shadows burst forth a figure, sprawling and writhing, silhouetted by the faint emergency lights. The creature stood tall, an enormous mass of jagged edges and fluid movements. It wasn't just chasing them, it was defending its territory, angry at the shadows that threatened to consume everything. "Look out, Mommy!" Timmy shouted, pointing with wide eyes. In that split second, Sarah locked eyes with the new creature. Instinct kicked in. If the shadows were dangerous, surely this beast could be something different. She had to make a choice: fight with the darkness that was consuming them, or risk the unknown of this other monster. "Get back!" she shouted, positioning herself protectively in front of Timmy, the air crackling with electric tension. She could feel the weight of their surroundings, how the very ground trembled beneath the weight of despair and darkness. But this creature, the one born from her worst nightmares, paused. She could see confusion flicker in its yellow eyes. It wasn't he attacking, it was waiting, assessing. "Help us!" Timmy's voice broke through, echoing the chant of the shadows. But this time, it served as a beacon, tugging at the creature's attention, pulling it closer. "Timmy, no!" Sarah lunged to cover his mouth, but it was too late. Something shifted in the creature, a flicker of recognition, a glimmer of hope. Another growl erupted, but it was softer, almost mournful. She dared to step back, releasing Timmy's mouth, watching the interplay of menace and curiosity unfold. "Mommy, we can trust it!" Timmy exclaimed, as if he could sense something she couldn't. "What do you know?" Sarah shot back, conflict raging within her as fear wrestled with instinct. The shadows swirled aggressively, sensing the shift in power. And just like that, blinding fear washed over Sarah again. They were running out of time. "Stay close," she ordered, pushing Timmy back behind her, preparing for a gamble she never wanted to make. Before another moment could pass, Sarah made a decision. She took a step toward the creature, heart racing louder than the chaos around them. Was this choice madness or salvation? But as she raised her hand in a tentative gesture of peace, the shadows howled angrily, spiraling into a vortex, ready to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. In that instant, a child's laughter joined the fray, rising from the shadows as if summoning back lost souls. "Play with us forever!" echoed around them, drowning her out as she stood on the precipice of a nightmare. "What will you choose?" Timmy's trembling voice broke through the din, igniting Sarah's awareness of the weight of their fate. Would hope truly be the key, or was it just a step back into the abyss? The shadows surged forward, and it became clear. They had to decide, right then and there. Escape or embrace something beyond their nightmares. But she couldn't figure out how to leap into the unknown. Would fighting the darkness bring them freedom, or would it send them deeper into despair? The air crackled, the shadows pulsing with an energy that felt malevolent, hungry. Sarah's heart raced, each beat drumming a warning against the encroaching abyss. The shadow beast stood poised like an omen, while Timmy clung to her leg, wide-eyed and trembling. The cacophony of laughter warped around them, mocking her with its sinister cheer. "Mommy, we can trust it." Timmy's small voice cut through the chaos, pulling her focus back. His innocence pierced the veil of her panic, but doubt dragged her under. Could this creature, part nightmare, part enigma, really be their salvation? Timmy's belief was unwavering, but Sarah could feel the shadows closing in, the chill creeping along her spine. The growl from the creature rumbled again, deep and haunting, sending vibrations through the ground beneath her feet. They were losing time. With a desperate breath, she took another small step toward the beast. The darkness shuddered around them, shadows reaching as if to claw her back, but she pressed on. We want to get out," she shouted, the words tearing from her throat, filled with fear and urgency. The creature's eyes locked onto hers. It was a moment suspended in terror and hope. Would it listen? As if mocking her wavering confidence, the laughter of the shadows grew, fanged whispers wrapping around her like cold fingers wanting to pull her under. "Mommy!" Timmy tugged at her hand, his voice desperate. "It's okay. Stay behind me," she commanded, fear bubbling into anger. She wouldn't let anything take him away. Not again. With the air pregnant with tension, the creature stepped forward, swirling tendrils of shadow brushing against its jagged edges, defying the darkness that craved to suffocate them. Its gaze was fierce yet oddly tender, as if it were a guardian. She had to gamble on trust. "Help us!" Sarah's voice echoed again, more of a plea than she intended. This time, though, something shifted, the shadows pausing in a moment of disbelief. Then, a shattering roar erupted from the depths of the alley. It came from behind the creature, a darkness more tangible, more sinister than any they faced. It swept through the area like a storm, blackening the ground, stalking toward them with intent. "Run!" Sarah yelled, but instead of retreating, the creature leaped forward, intercepting the advancing shadows with fierce ferocity. It roared again, a sound that rang through her bones, a guttural challenge. The shadows recoiled as it struck, wavering like a candle in a gust. "Timmy, now!" she urged, shoving him toward the thin slice of light at the alley's end. Her eyes flicked between him and the chaos around them, the fight between darkness and the creature unfolding like a nightmare ballet. Timmy hesitated, torn. "I can't leave you." "Go!" She felt the air thickening, the shadows rearing up around them again. She wouldn't let this end like this. Wouldn't let them sink into the abyss. He finally turned, scuttling toward the light, his small form silhouetted against the shadows. She felt a surge of panic as the growl of the creature echoed behind her, but it was different now, more like a battle cry. The shadows hissed and recoiled from the creature as it plunged into the dark mass, a desperate dance against the odds. "Mommy!" Timmy's cry cracked like glass through the air, thunderous panic born of childhood fragility. Drawing in a deep breath, she glanced back, the creature locked in battle, its breath heavy with rage and grief. She couldn't falter. She had to make it out. As she dashed towards the light, the shadows lunged forward again, more solid and enraged than before, and she heard the beast's final growl. But then, a sudden spark of illumination tore through the darkness, bathing the alley in a ghostly light, scattering the shadows, making them scream in anger. Had she found a way out? Was it a trap or an escape? But as her foot crossed the threshold into the light, the shadows twitched violently, their form shifting, writhing in chaos, refusing to let go. The creature's roar reverberated behind her again, but this time a voice, not just a growl, rumbled from the shadows. "Don't leave us." The realization hit her hard. What were the shadows? What had they become? And who had she just chosen to fight? Panic surged anew. She turned back just as the light flickered. Shadows stretched towards her, and she faltered frozen amid the blinding chaos. Now there was no way back, and no certainty of what lay ahead. But one thing was clear: whatever pulled her into this battle was far from over. What had she unlocked by stepping toward the light? The shadows writhed like a nest of serpents, clawing at the very fabric of the light surrounding Sarah. Panic twisted her insides as she felt the energy of the darkness swell, hungry for her soul. Timmy was nearly out of the alley, shadows swarming at her heels, their whispers relentless and sharp. "Mommy!" The urgency in his voice cut into her like a blade, amplifying the terror in her heart. Sarah's eyes darted between her son's trembling figure in the light and the malevolent cascade approaching behind her. She took a tentative step back, knowing that each move could be her last. "Timmy, stay there." "Don't!" But the shadows were weaving, becoming a wall, a clawing, swirling mass that blocked her path to him. She could see his little body frozen, eyes wide, anchored in the light but terrified of the dark. The creature roared behind her, its form shifting as the shadows gnawed at it. "Not now. Stay strong." The words tumbled out before she had time to think. Every instinct screamed to retreat, but the terror of losing Timmy pushed her forward. The ground beneath her began to tremble, and the laughter grew into a cackling din, echoing off the walls of the alleyway. Was it mocking her? A single thought pierced through. What if they weren't just shadows, but remnants of those who had been devoured before? "Help us!" she screamed, and to her dismay, it felt more like prayer than a command. The creature bucked against the tide of shadows, a beacon of darkness clashing with darkness. Fear clawed at Sarah's chest as she forced herself to move. She ducked past the thrashing tendrils, every step feeling like she was wading through molasses, engulfed by fear and despair. "Mommy! Please!" Timmy's voice quivered, growing fainter, and her heart nearly shattered. "No!" she cried, swinging her head towards the light. It flickered, pulsing as though it were alive. That flicker became a frantic heartbeat, each thump a reminder of her goal. She lunged towards it, racing against the darkness clashing behind her. But the shadows had other plans. They lashed out, striking her arms, pulling her back with icy grips that burrowed deep into her very essence. The creature's howl resonated again, a sound of anguish that made her bones ache, but Sarah fought against the tide. "Timmy!" The desperation in her voice rang loud, reverberating off the alley walls, bouncing back mangled and twisted. Suddenly, the shadows began to retreat, hissing as if scalded by the light. The beast bellowed, contributing to the chorus of chaos. Each moment felt like eternity as Sarah sprinted, blindly throwing herself toward her son. The light enveloped her, haloing her in a sense of dread and hope all at once. For a heartbeat, she believed she was free, and then she stumbled, falling into a thick darkness as the light snuffed out, like an extinguished candle. She found herself grasping at nothingness, and a cold laugh echoed in her mind, taunting her for thinking she could escape. "Do you not understand?" The shadows coiled around her, forming twisted shapes that seemed familiar, faces trapped in horror. "You belong here." "Timmy!" she screamed once more, trying to rise, but the shadows settled over her, weighing her down like a grave. Above the cacophony, she heard something whispering, a voice not from within the shadows, but from beyond. "It is your turn to choose. What did that mean?" As her vision dimmed, a flash of light burst before her eyes, an opening. Heart racing, she grasped at that fleeting hope before the shadows coiled tighter. Could she still get Timmy? Gritting her teeth, she focused. No! You want to take him. But would that be enough? In that moment of doubt, she felt them pulling back, sensing her fight. The last remnants of light poured into her mind, humming with energy. It was as if it was calling her, asking for a choice that would echo in the darkness. "Timmy, hold on." With a desperate call, she readied herself, determined to break free. But would the choice she made save them both, or doom them to the consuming shadows forever? The darkness whispered, chilling her to the bone. "Time is running out. Choose wisely." The darkness felt alive, a breathless weight that crushed Sarah's spirit as she struggled to shift her consciousness, fighting fiercely against the shadows that coiled around her. "No! You want to take him." The defiant roar echoed in the chaos, born from a raw, unfiltered love for her son. But doubt crawled forward, insidious and sly, whispering its taunts. Could she truly win against this force, against the way it twisted her reality? As the shadows pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, images flashed through her mind: Timmy's laughter, Lily's sweet voice, the warmth of home. "I want to leave you," she cried, finding a flicker of clarity. She could feel both them and herself standing at the precipice of hope and despair. The shadows hesitated for just a moment, almost sensing her resolve. In that breathless silence, a light flickered behind her eyelids, warmer and brighter than the suffocating grip of darkness. It called to her, a beacon of possibility in the chaos. "Mommy, help!" Timmy's voice ripped through the shadows, wrenching her heart and shattering her despair. "Stay with me, buddy," Sarah shouted, using every ounce of her strength to push back against the writhing blackness. The weight of the shadows pressed down, each whisper louder than the last, screaming, "You belong with us." In response, she dug deeper, remembering the bond that held them together, a connection made of love and light. Her heart ignited, flaring bright against the gloom. "I choose love." The words erupted from her throat, breaking free of the dreadful veil. The instant they left her lips, a surge of light cascaded from within, a pure, incandescent energy that shook off the tendrils clutching her. The shadows screamed, recoiling, an anguished hiss like a wounded animal. She felt the air swell around her, an empowering tide that swept through, breaking the chains of despair. Sarah bolted into the light, flinging herself outward, heart racing with reckless hope. She could see Timmy again, his small form caught in the glow, a bright star in that abyss. "Mommy!" he shouted, scrambling toward her, arms outstretched. The darkness writhed in anger, fighting to reclaim what it had lost. "No!" Sarah shouted, instinctively aiming her hands toward the clutches of shadow. "You want to take my son." With each step she took toward him, the light swelled larger, stronger, dissolving the shadows around her into wisps of mist. But the creature howled indistinctly from behind, a throaty sound filled with rage and desperation. Its anger surged like a storm, grasping at Timmy, trying to sever the bond they shared. Suddenly time fractured around her, movement slowed, and she could feel the pull of inevitability, a dark promise threatening to consume them both. Gathering every ounce of her love, she surged forward, repeating, "I choose love. You aren't our master." The shadows recoiled, waves of gray, as if stung by the very declaration. Timmy's eyes widened with understanding, mirroring the courage she felt seeping into her bones. "Mommy, I'm scared. Just hold on. I'm coming," she yelled, fear blending with fierce determination. She could do this. They would escape this nightmare together. The moment she reached him, A pulse of energy erupted, a clash of light against darkness. At the exact point their hands touched, a shockwave rippled through the air. The creature locked its yellow eyes onto their connection, screaming with a fury that split the air as the light erupted, bright, blinding. Sarah felt tendrils of shadow pulling back, terrified of the light they had created, as if they were fire and the shadows were paper. Timmy's cry rang out, not in fear, but in joy, as the shadows recoiled more violently, pummeling against the barrier that now held them. "We're winning, Mommy," he exclaimed, expressions of light dancing all around them, like happy ghosts returning home. "Yes, we are." Sarah felt a warmth wash over them, dissolving the darkness like dawn vanquishing night. The malevolent whispers faded into nothing, leaving only silence, the kind filled with hope and fading nightmares. She turned to Timmy, eyes shimmering with proud tears. "Let us go home, sweetheart," she said, pulling him closer. A whirlwind of light exploded, swallowing the remnants of the shadows, as the world around them shifted. They emerged into crisp, familiar air, the town glittering in moonlight, serene and untroubled. Maple Grove was alive, real again, not only as a place, but as a renewed essence, untainted by the horrors they had faced. Holding her son tightly, Sarah could feel the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket, threading through the very fabric of their existence, full of love, promise, and a bright future ahead. "Mommy, can we go stargazing?" Timmy asked, his face bright with wonder, the shadows of fear dissipated forever. "Of course, buddy. But first, let us get Lily." Her heart could finally breathe, free from the dark. They walked home beneath an open sky, filled with stars that truly sparkled, no longer haunting her dreams, but watching over them. As the shadows of the sinister ship melted into memory, Sarah embraced her children, filled with gratitude and love, vowing to never let darkness overshadow them again. They were safe. They were home. And in that moment, the future felt bright. Don't wait another second. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more thrilling tales that captivate your heart. Smash that like button to help this video reach more amazing people. Get in the comments and flood the section with your thoughts on this mind-blowing ending. And don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support is what makes our community strong. Let's keep the adventure alive.